Bert, 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 Bert! Get him, yeah! Ron Babe was right. Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. Hey everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. It's the 9th of October. I'm sitting in the kennel like so many typical Sundays, getting this recorded to you and getting it out. And do not skip this because I got to announce a couple of winners, okay? So, in fact, one of the winners has not responded to an email yet. That was the winner of our Garmin giveaway to all patrons. All patrons' names were put in the hat. And then we had just a regular listener, not even a Patreon patron, and she won a Gunner Kennel. See, that's where if you skip these intros, you're going to miss a lot of that stuff. So don't skip the intro, okay? But I will announce them in case you really want to skip the intro. I am going to announce the winner. So Jeff Young won an Alpha 10 and TT Mini collar. That is no small affair. Here's the problem, Jeff. You're a patron of the show. That's where we got your name from. You've been a patron for almost 2 years, as it turned out. We emailed you, and we didn't check. We didn't get any response. Now, this is not going to flip over. Don't worry. We're going to hunt you down, Jeff. But if you're a patron, you probably listen to the show regularly, and you probably just didn't look at your emails, okay? So check your emails out and get a hold of me because, Jeff, you won the Alpha 10 and the collar. So there. And then just being a general old everyday listener, we had a Gunner Kennel giveaway. And this person wasn't even a patron. They just went to the website, signed up. They listened to the show, and they followed the instructions on Instagram. And Megan Rudd. Now, we did hear back from Megan. She's excited. She's getting a brand-new Gunner Kennel, color of her choice. She's going to be sending us a picture once she gets that kennel in her hands with her pooch in there. And I don't know her pooch's name. I didn't even know what breed of dog it was. I just know that Megan Rudd was the winner of the Gunner Kennel. So there. See, that's why you don't skip this stuff. Because you're like, oh, God, here goes 20 minutes of, okay, this is not going to be 20 minutes long. It's going to be very short and sweet. You already know how you get in a lot of this stuff. You just have to listen and pay attention. Or if you want to get into really good stuff, like patron discounts, like for Wilderness Athlete, for Pike Gear, for Walton's, Gunner Kennels, Onyx. See? Well, Onyx, anybody can get. You can get Onyx on the back of a cereal box for 20% off. But we love Onyx. But where Onyx comes in is Onyx Elite members get the biggest discount on the Upland Institute. See how I tied that all in? Anyway, I thank you, all of my patrons. I'm going to be putting out an HDP Talk episode tomorrow. It's going to be just for me and you to listen to. And my sponsors, my title sponsor, Pike Gear, Onyx Maps, Boss Shot Shells, which I'm telling you, I cannot wait to test them. I'm going up to the UP. I'm going up on the guided hunt that was the Pike Gear giveaway. I'm going up there. I'm going to be shooting my number 7 20 gauges, grouse and woodcock. It's all I'm shooting. I'm all non-tox. Well, I'm all non-tox because, I got Boss. But you can get Boss too. You can get Waltons. You can get anything from Waltons. We just did a video of me making sausage. It was not great. I mean, my sausage stuffing capabilities are not like you watch on YouTube. It's a little clunky, but we had a lot of fun doing that with all of our Walton's gear. And my dogs just rode all the way to Virginia with me. I had to do a little work on the garage down there at the house in Virginia. And of course, my Gunner Kennel food crate now has to be reloaded because I've had it all the way from South Dakota or all the way from North Dakota down to Virginia, going to the UP with it, and then on to South Dakota. And all I got to do is refill that stuff, and it's fresh as a daisy. I'm telling you, the dogs love it when it comes out of the Gunner Kennel food crate. That's all. And Garmin, well, I mean, how do I thank Garmin enough? And if you are paying attention, there is going to be more Garmin. Well, there's going to be more more Gunner Kennel giveaways. We're going to have more Garmin giveaways. This is going to turn into the Price is Right giveaway podcast pretty soon. It is the number one training tool of all trainers out there. No real, honest to good. I'll bet you that even the people who are trainers who are sponsored by other products, like, other brands, I bet you when you see them go hunting, they got a Garmin. I'll bet you any money. It's like one of them dirty little secrets. And where they go, because they need to find the right support system and the right place to buy it, they go to W Hunting Supply. Why wouldn't you? I mean, they sell more collars. Now, I'm not saying transmitters. They sell more collars than any other hunting dog supply. So don't go to somewhere where you're not going to get some support, okay? When you need to buy your Garmin collar, you go to W Hunting Supply and just ask for Jason or Buddy. You may not get them on the phone. You'll probably get one of them. But if you've got problems setting it up, figuring it out, syncing it, rebooting it, you can call them and get the help. You're not going to call anybody else that's going to answer the phone and say, yeah, what's the matter? So that's what I'm saying. It's service. It's like the service that my deck drawer system gives me. Again, the thing is deck drawer systems are guaranteed. Like if something goes wrong, they're going to replace it. But I'm telling you now, this is my third season with the deck drawer system in there. It works like the day I installed it. All their hardware has got Loctite on the bolts. That is so important. This thing goes down bumpy roads. My road's a bumpy road, but my life's a bumpy road. And I wish I'd have had a deck drawer system, or at least, I just didn't. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. Look at deck drawer systems. You're not going to lose anything because all of your stuff is going to be in the drawers for hunting season. Now, you might be like me. You might have to pull half of it out because I still treat it like a junk drawer. But having my guns, my ammo, my transmitters, my whistles, my bells, I even keep all of my K9 Athlete products in there for the dogs and for me because I know when I pull it open, boom, there it is. Whether it's my Energy and Focus, my Hydrate and Recover for the dogs, New Dog, whatever it is, K9 Athlete and Wilderness Athlete, they're stuck in my deck drawer system. Just like, and the pack-out bars. I got more pack-out bars coming from K9. Well, actually, it's from Wilderness Athlete. If you think you've had a good, what we would call a protein bar or an energy bar, you have got to try their peanut butter pack-out bar. That will get you past a meal when you're hunting. Oh, my God. They are, and I got 3 boxes of them. I had to order them, like literally. I had to be like, I guess I'll use my discount code. Anyway, my discount code's pretty good, but I'm not going without them. I am not. My Weatherby shotgun is already loaded in the drawer of the deck drawer system to go to the UP this week and hunt with Evan and Amanda. It was going to be Evan and his mom, Sarah, but it's going to be Evan and Amanda. And Evan and Amanda will be shooting Weatherby shotguns because Sarah won the Weatherby shotgun in the grouse giveaway from Pike Gear. And I'm going to bring an extra Weatherby so Amanda can shoot a Weatherby. This is going to be a Weatherby grouse hunt. It will be. And everybody, including the guide that we're going with, who I happen to know for a fact, feeds what to their dogs? Well, they feed Purina Pro Plan like everybody does. I know a couple of you still don't, and I guess that's not bad, a couple out of 80,000 people. But I'm trying to get to your last 2 people. Quit screwing around. Purina Pro Plan, you can find a formula that will work for you, okay? You can. It's impossible that every professional dog trainer and competitor and field trialer feeds Purina. And believe me, they don't get it for free. They want to feed their dog the best. So that's what they feed it. And that I do not keep in my deck drawer system. That stays in where? The Gunner Kennel Food Crate, which under my cap is a little difficult to refill. I'm going to have to pull out some. Anyway, I love the stuff. My dogs love the stuff, and that's it. Now, we have had, I think, what are we at now? A year and a half, almost, a year and a half of the Upland Institute. And, I think we've had in a year and a half, one person ask for their money back. One person. And that person said they wanted their money back because we didn't put an e-collar around the dog's waist anywhere, and that's how he wanted to learn how to train. And I was like, did you watch the commercial? Did you see a belly band on any dog out there? No. The Upland Institute is training by Justin McGrahill that will get you through your first season, your second season, and all the seasons to come. Train your dog a little bit, just a little bit. And you could do that with the Upland Institute. Bam, that wasn't bad. 10 minutes, 29 seconds. I got everybody, Patron, Pike, Onyx, Boss, Waltons, Gunner Kennels, Garmin, W, Deck Drawer Systems, Weatherby Shotguns, Purina Pro Plan, Canine Athlete, and of course, the Upland Institute. So there. Wow. I will say I'm trying to get a beer sponsor. So if anybody that knows West Michigan area, I've been on when my wife and I go out on, we go out about once a week, or if I'm gone for a week or two, as soon as I get home, we'll pack up because, she doesn't run out to a restaurant by herself. And we went down to Pigeon Hill Brewery yesterday. That's been our new to-go spot for about the last month and a half. I absolutely love their beer. They don't have any Miller Lite. They got. So this is a unabashed plea for someone who knows the owners of Pigeon Hill, and I pray that at least one of them is a hunter. And I really pray that one of them is an upland hunter, because I would love to partner up with Pigeon Hill. And you can find Pigeon Hill everywhere. Yeah, there. They're not paying for that ad. That was just gratis. Anyway, don't forget, next week I'm going to be gone. Oh, I got to do a Zoom room this week, so Patreon patrons, pay attention. I'll be putting that invite out on Wednesday or Thursday morning. And that's it. That's it. I want you to enjoy this episode. This is a kind of, I don't want to say it's a continuing series, but I love it when somebody comes up through the ranks of training their puppy and going to a hunt test. And I mean, a first timer, and I found just the right person. Now, I happen to know Andrew had been an upland hunter for a long time, but his wife Rachel, even though way better dog trainer than him, never had a versatile hunting dog before. So this is the story of Rachel, a little bit of Andrew, and her journey into the uplands with training and testing and hunting. So there, yeah, I love this episode. It went a little long, but it was worth it. Talk to you soon. Bye. Oh, yeah. I love you guys. I love you girls. And I love you women. See? It doesn't even roll. I love you girls more.
All right. Hey, everybody. It's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. I'm on the phone with Rachel, Sage, Basil, and a guy that I knew originally, Andrew Willard. So I'm with the entire Willard family from the Bitterroot Valley of Montana. Now, most of you probably don't know those names, but I know Andrew through Onyx. Andrew is an employee of Onyx, and I think he actually owns it, I think, right? Aren't you?
I do not. I do not own Onyx.
Well, then you were silly enough to partner with the Upland Institute. I thought you had to have some high up clout to do that, Andrew.
I've a little bit. I have enough leash to hang myself, I guess. Don't let me try and make mistakes, which is great.
And then his wife Rachel, who I've just met, we're doing this via Zoom, so it's a lot easier to talk to each other and see each other. I came to find out that Rachel ran a dog this year, their poodle pointer, in a natural ability test, and I was actually hoping it wouldn't be a maximum score, Rachel, because I mean, we're going to have to embellish the parts about the training instead of the test, how it came out. But you had a really great day this summer, right?
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. We had a really good day. And I think if Sage could do that every day of her life, that would just be the ideal type of day for her. run out, find some birds, track some birds, and fetch some bumpers and swim a little. And she was a happy camper. We had a lot of fun.
And were you relying on genetics or extra training or a little bit of both? What was your journey for, is this your first pointing dog between the two of you, Andrew and?
Yeah, this is our first pointing dog together.
Yeah.
Andrew grew up in a hunting family with English setters.
Mm-hmm.
That they primarily did more recreational hunting with. So, just kind of took the dogs out and let them figure it out, but never really put any heavy controls or tried to train the dogs with a lot of structure, at least from what I have heard.
Yeah. Like I think growing up, my dad did and still does love to upland hunt. So we were basically out as many weekends as we could, starting in September. So we'd chase mountain grouse all September, and then we'd switch over to pheasant and quail when that opened up, and just carry on with that all year. But yeah, I never asked our dogs how they felt about life, but their life was basically just fun. They didn't have a lot of discipline or control, but they got to hunt a lot. Had a good time.
I think that's 90% of the people out there with dogs. I'm sure the more you get to know them. Now, when you get in that circle like you guys have with going through NAVDA, you start seeing what trained dogs look like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my first 3 dogs, they knew their name and they miraculously hunted because it was all there.
Yeah.
I was like, well, it doesn't need to know how to heel. We walk him on a rope long enough. It's called heel,
Right.
That's right.
But no, now you guys are going to go down this rabbit hole where I got to teach this dog someday to off-leash heel, which I never did in my entire life, But how was the decision made that Rachel was going to be the handler, and Andrew was did you make him sit in the truck and not watch, or how did that go, Rachel?
No, I put some body paint on that said "Go Team," and I cheerled from the side.
Posters and air horn.
Yeah.
One guy cheering section.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to talk about it, or you want me to talk about it?
Sure, I can talk about it.
Yeah.
So Andrew grew up in the hunting family. I didn't grow up hunting. I've been hunting for, I guess this is my 4th season. And I grew up with little pillow sitter Shih Tzus, which were fun and cute and had zero control. They had no training at all.
Right.
Except for how to sit on pillows.
Except for how to sit on pillows. They were extraordinarily bred for pillow sitting. Very cute and fluffy. But I had this passion for training dogs and for working dogs. And just as a kid, my favorite TV show was anything on Animal Planet having to do with dogs and training dogs and working dogs. And so I was just really at my passion, even prior to meeting Andrew or getting into hunting, was always like this desire to train dogs and to train dogs what they were bred to do.
Yeah.
So with training our dogs, Andrew and I have tried to do everything equally and pretty much have done that.
Yeah.
Whether it's an obedience skill or just being out there in the field, trying to trade off who's the handler and otherwise. So when we decided to do the NA test with Sage, we kind of had talked about it, and I think I had asked, well, who do you think should handle her? And Andrew then said, well, why don't you be the handler? I think that's where your passion really lies. I love hunting too.
Yeah.
And I was really excited because I was really hoping I could handle her. So Andrew was really supportive and just encouraged me in that. And I think he saw that was a passion area for me as well. So it was, cool to be able to get to do that.
Yeah, that is, I would say it's not flipping the script, but usually, like a lot of times, it's all my years in NAVDA, when I met a husband and wife team or a couple team, whether they were married or not, it was always the person who had the background kind of always said, well, I'll do it. I'll do it. And then eventually on dog 6 or dog 4 or 3, I would see them again, and I would meet their other half, and they would be like, oh, you're not running dog? No, my wife's going to run. You guys flipped it right off the bat, which is not a bad idea because first of all, women are better at this than guys are. There's no
objectively. Yeah. I mean, I was just going to say, if we're all in the cone of trust with the 3 of us and everyone that'll listen to this, Rachel just flat out reads and handles dogs better than I do. It's not even a point of debate. Right. Even we had a few years ago, he's since passed away, a little Heinz 57 mutt that had some border collie, and 56 other things in him, whatever those would be. And this is sort of like just as COVID was kicking off, and like Rachel like bought a bunch of stuff to agility train him because he was such a hyper, dog who just needed a job to do. And even through that, you could tell she was super excited. And I felt like with that dog, like he and I were buddies, but Rachel was the boss. So like he and I were at this level, like the same level, and Rachel was up here. So
well, what you said earlier about, you were raised around setters, and that is how most people do it. What most people did back in the day was relied on their voice. Dogs can tell, dogs are very sensitive creatures. They can tell when you're mad, when you're not going to do anything about it. And around the house, it was always like, that was our version of training. But like our moms had to do a way better job than our dads did. You know what I mean? So I every time I was at the Invitational a year and a half ago to pick up Tagus, and so this breed that everyone says, why do you keep getting into weird breeds? I says, well, I'm just, I've had normal breeds. Why not try something different? And there was 4 of these dogs represented already at the Invitational, which that never happened with the Bracco breed, which means there's 4 prize 1 utility dogs. And 3 of them were handled by women and trained by women I was like, took me 3 years to get a dog just to pass the utility test. Right. And the one girl I'm really good friends with in Iowa, she raises, what's the Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. So she decides to get a hunting dog and nails it. So anyway, I think you made a really good decision in the end there. But Rachel, at what point your test was when? In July? I can't remember when.
Yeah, late July, 3rd weekend.
July. So, being in Montana, you didn't have a lot of last winter to do stuff with. What was your process this spring? And how did you get some guidance on getting ready for the test?
Yeah, great question. So when we first got Sage, I don't think either of us realized we were going to dive this deep into the NAVHDA world and hunt test type ideas. And it was really through reading books and getting to know some people. We found NAVHDA and decided, hey, we ought to go to some of these different training days. And Courtney and William Bastian put on a handlers clinic, an NAUT handlers clinic in May. We kind of hemmed and hawed, and should we go? Oh, I think Sage will be too young. Well, they texted us. We'd become friends by this point, and they texted us, hey, we have a couple last minute openings. Are you guys coming? And we said, well, sure, we're free. Might as well go to this handlers clinic. Not sure what this stuff is, but let's check it out. So that was really our first exposure even to the tests.
Yeah.
We knew we wanted to get pigeons from the books that we had read and just the training, and we had dropped the ball. Some people had said, oh, if you didn't get pigeons by last year, you're going to be too late to have pigeons to train with. And we miraculously found some good homing pigeon breeder guys up in Missoula and built a coop. In fact, the coop wasn't even totally built by the time we brought the pigeons home. They had to sit in a dog kennel for about 6 hours while we finished the coop. But yeah, so we spent some time doing some one-on-one sessions with William, which was really helpful because we wanted to train Sage and continue to train them ourselves, but really didn't know exactly what we should be doing. And so we did some one-on-ones with him to kind of get some ideas of, all right, here's how to work with the pigeons, and here's how to do this, and met some other folks through the NAVHDA chapter that we were able to train with just off to the side, and had a lot of fun doing that. So yeah, pretty much starting in May, we started running on pigeons a lot. That was our main goal, was just lots of, it's often
exposure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one thing about that handlers clinic that was cool that you said on is like, I mean, it was pretty intimidating before then, right? To go to a NAVHDA event because that, well, we don't know anything, right? This like little puppy, like what do we know? And like at that handlers clinic, like we saw one, like an NA, they ran 2 dogs to demonstrate portions of the test. They ran a wire hair that was 8 months old, I think, for the NA portion. And this dog was like a souped up turbo hunting machine. We're like, oh my gosh, right? And the wheels start turning, like, could that be my dog? And 4 or 5 months, like, is this what they turn into, right? Just this kind of like magical, go from this kind of like goofy little puppy to just an absolute, bat out of hell. And then one of the other handlers ran a griff that was like a prize one griff. And I don't know much about griffs, but this is like a big running super dog. And it was just cool to see like an awesome NA dog and then an awesome Finnish dog.
Yeah.
And you go like, holy cow, like that's different than the setters growing up that I'm sure I was screaming whoa at when I was, 8 years old.
Right.
They weren't ever trained to know what whoa meant, but just
Yeah.
what you did in the woods. Whoa!
Whoa just made you feel better, right?
Exactly. Wow, stop.
The equivalent today would be stop doing that.
Yeah. As if it,
Back in the day, if you didn't train, you at least used the one word that trainers use. You used whoa.
exactly. And
I
just
said
scream it.
whoa.
Yeah. Scream it repeatedly and just hope that it works. But I guess it's like from that, like I think we were just pleasantly surprised about how welcoming everyone in our NAVTA chapter was. Like it felt like, because again, we still don't know much. Like everyone just kind of jumped in and was just super excited that we had this puppy and like, oh my gosh, like we have access to some property over here. You want to come over on a Friday afternoon and run your puppy, and you want to do this and you want to do that. And it's just kind of cool, I think. Like it from that point on wasn't intimidating. It just felt super like welcoming, which is great, as we started to dive into different resources.
So that's not a path that everybody gets to take. I mean, I think it's a common one for sure.
Yeah.
Because chapters are like that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, over the years, I judged so many people that got the dog from the breeder, and part of the breeding requirements were if you ever want to breed this dog and have full registration, we require that you do an NA test. And I've seen people pull up in a, not picking on a car, but basically pull up in a Corvette with a young, let's say German short hair. And you're like, what are you doing? Oh, I don't know. Breeder said I had to show up, but they signed up for the test. But you took a path that I think is probably a little more common. But the handlers clinic is really cool because you probably got a little meat off the bone. You really kind of showed in just like, oh, your dog's gonna need to swim and track, and like, what's that mean? Really you got shown that stuff. Yeah,
and I think we read like some material that had like a scorecard and stuff, and your brain melts, right? Like, holy cow, like how on earth am I going to help this dog to, prize out in every single possible attribute? Like, how does this even happen?
This isn't going to work.
No.
Rachel, did you, knowing that you had to do the field, the water, and the tracking, what was your experience with the dog? Now, how old was Sage when you ran? And I think, did we say Sage was a poodle pointer? I don't know if I said that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we did either, but yeah, she's a poodle pointer. She was just right at 6 months old when we ran.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, I call that's a baby.
Yeah.
She's a baby.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I don't think I've ever run more than one dog at that age because I never had one that was good enough.
Yeah, and like I said, our intent initially wasn't to
do that.
And at the time, like she, like, right. I mean, I'd say for the first month and a half or so when we got her, we could tell she was smart, but she clearly wasn't interested in hunting. It felt like, she's kind of bouncing around. And
yeah, so her first bird exposure, she was 9 weeks old, and we had William had a crippled pigeon, a previous dog training dog, I think, had gotten a hold of it, and he knew we were bringing Sage, so he kind of kept this kind of sad bird for her. And we all sat out in the field, all four of us, Courtney, William, and me and Andrew, and little baby itty bitty 14-pound Sage, and we put her on the ground with this pigeon that can't really fly. I think they even wing locked it, and she was scared of it.
Right.
She was like hiding behind our backs and looking at it like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it would move a little and she was like, whoa, that's really scary. And so we finally hid everything but in the pigeon, but its tail. So kind of grasped it in our hands and just had the tail sticking out and kind of got her to chase it like 2 inches, and she'd cower back. And Andrew and I were like, oh man, I think we got a dud. Like, I think like dang it, and having no experience, right? Like, and she's 9 weeks old. She's a baby at that point. But
Yeah. And I should say at that point, Ron, like I think you and I happened to be on the phone for something like 3 or 4 days later, and you'd said something effective like, don't worry about it, right? Like
Yeah.
she's like honey dog bred from good hunting lines, and like
Right.
it'll kick in. Like don't chill. Don't worry about it, man.
Yeah, so it progressed from there. Finally, she, after about half an hour of enticing her, she finally picked up this sad little pigeon and paraded with it for a little while. And then she kind of was done. She was like, I'm tired. I'm over the pigeon.
Yeah.
I'm pooped. It's been half an hour. That thing was scary. I carried it. I'm not sure what to do. So I'm like, all right, guys, thanks so much. This is so fun. So we come back several weeks later. Sage is then maybe 11 or 12 weeks old. And William gets out the pigeon launchers and says, hey, let's see. And this dog was not using her nose for anything. Very somber dog. Like she wasn't like a lot of poodle pointers are known for being really goofy with these goofy
like
clownish personalities. And she's somber. Like the pictures we got from the breeder at 7 weeks old, she was somber, like very serious, focused. Anyway, so goofy dog in her own way. But so we get out the pigeon launchers, and we showed her the pigeon, which by this point she's kind of excited. But we put the pigeon in the launcher where she can no longer see it, hide it in some thin grass.
Yeah.
So we end up walking circles around the pigeon launcher, and she has no clue it's there.
Yeah.
So finally,
totally oblivious.
So finally,
I'm going back to, I think I got it done again.
I think we got it done.
Yeah.
I think we got it done. So we go. I'm with Sage across, exactly across from William, and with the pigeon in the launcher in line with us, right? So, for me to the launcher to William is a straight line, and Sage is by me. So he calls her, Sage, come here, boop, boop, boop. And so she runs straight and hits her chest on the launcher.
And keeps running.
She blew right over top of it, just ran into it, and was like, what was that big rock there sitting in the grass? And just had no clue. So again, we're like, dang it, Sage is a dud. And shortly after that is when we go to the handler's clinic and see these amazing, we saw this, maybe it was at an NA day shortly after that, where we saw a
5-month-old.
Yagrin was 5 months, a 5-month-old wire hair, who was a month older than our dog, who was just slaying it, running big, running confident, pointing hard, stopping hard. Her inexperienced owner was yelling, whoa. And we were like, oh my gosh, like that dog's amazing. Our dog's a dud.
I got a feeling there's like a commonality thread of dud moments here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We were like, dang it. All right, well, let's keep trying. So William's advice at one point was, she just needs a lot more pigeons and launchers. And it was at some point, I don't know when the switch flipped, but there was this bird dog switch that got flipped in this little puppy, and she turned into a raging monster, total bird maniac.
Yeah.
Courtney, as part of her upland, had put on a women's pointing dog training camp in June. And so by that point, Sage would have been 5 months old.
Yeah.
So I took my little baby 5-month-old poodle pointer off to women's pointing dog training camp. And we were in the puppy group, of course, doing some like intro to bird exposure and, baby pointing and baby tracking. And we were in this group, and a couple of female NAVHDA judges were there, and they were, all right, let's get out a pigeon and have the dog seen pigeons. Most of them had. And Sage was lunging aggressively at the leash, barking incessantly. And they're like, oh yeah, that's good. Like, bring it out. I'm like, I'm not sure how much of this you want to keep bringing out. She's not going to stop. The other puppies were all kind of sitting there like, oh, that's interesting. What's that pigeon? And they're like, no, like, let Sage keep barking. The drive is really good. Well, about 10 minutes into incessant barking while they're trying to talk, they said, actually, here's some tricks for how to keep her a little bit more quiet while we're having these demonstrations. So yeah, some switch flipped between 4 and 5 months old from end of May to end of June. And yeah, she's just progressed and blossomed every day since.
Yeah. So at that point, like, we weren't signed up for a NAVHDA test. But we thought, well, I guess she does have some hunting instinct. So why not? And so we kind of scrambled around and got on a wait list for not our chapter, but another Montana chapter's test, which is cool.
So now you still know you got to do the tracking in the water. And, I when I hear your story, part of me is like analyzing, like, no,
Yeah.
not, but then there's a lot of paths to get from here to Montana, right? There's a lot of highways to take. They all lead to the same spot.
Yeah.
And I remember being it early on in the bird dog years of my life, doing a lot of that, like needs more. And
Yeah.
now I'm from the school of like, what it needs more of is time.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
I could be 100% wrong here, but I don't think I am. Just because, because I'm old, I know shit. But you probably, if you didn't, hook up with Courtney and Will, you probably would have saw that same thing come hunting season, right?
At some point, yeah, for sure.
It's kind of like when that little wiring thing, neuron clicks, and it connects to that instinct that's in that dog's gene, but you kind of jump charged it.
Right.
You put it like I don't know if that truck's going to start this morning. Let's put the battery cables to it,
Right.
And,
Yeah.
And that can get you down a slippery slope. So I guess first one I want to ask is, so obviously in our, in a field test for an NA test of whatever, it really doesn't matter what organization, puppy test, we're looking for inherited pointing. I haven't heard you say that yet. I've heard you say bird crazy. Were you seeing the points come early when the nose was starting to get used?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she did. We didn't train any point into her.
Right. You didn't have to you didn't have to worry about that. You were seeing, once you saw the desire for the bird, the pointing instinct followed with it.
The point came naturally. Yeah, we didn't do anything specific other than just
Let her
put
do
her,
her thing.
yeah, put her into the experiences to get exposed to the right things, birds, to bring out her natural instincts. That was really what we'd heard a lot about the NA test is, it's a natural ability test, but like you mentioned before, you don't just take a puppy that's been in an apartment in the middle of city and toss them into a field. So we did a lot of just exposure from, puppy walks to just get her exposed to lots of different types of terrain and cover and to then introducing the birds. And we had some really great points on pigeons and some really awful days with pigeons where she just blew through things.
Describe an awful pigeon experience for me.
Okay, so there was this one particular day that we were on some state land that about 3 or 4 miles from our house, we had trained our pigeons how to get up there. By this point, Sage has figured out she can track us to where we had walked into the field to the pigeons and find the pigeons and get to within, by the time we figure out where she is, because she also had to start pointing flags. We had to pull the flags that marked where the pigeons were. So she'd find those really easily.
She's a smart little pup.
She was smart. So on this particular day, we were like, all right, we got this little section. It's a new section of state land we haven't hunted, right? Trained her on before. We're going to walk this massive loop around the other side to plant these couple birds. The wind's going to be in this direction. We're going to get over there and, try to get her in the birds without her catching our scent first.
Right.
So we get the birds out there. I think we put 2 next to each other. We wanted to replicate a double flush scenario because she was creeping in too close because we were just too excited to get a point.
Right.
One training mistake we had made was not popping the birds soon enough. Yeah. So we were letting her get to within way too close. And that's a novice training mistake that we made that we've looked back and would correct if we were doing it again. But so we were like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put both pigeons here. Pop them both as soon as she hits the scent cone. So we take her out the other way, not the way we had walked. On our way there, we bust a covey of huns. Wild birds. Oh, and nice. They go flushing wildly, and they're young, right? So we purposely stayed off this land during the young hatchling season. We knew there were huns out there. But this was past that point where we knew it was probably okay to be out there. We weren't expecting, obviously, to find them right there. So she is inches behind the tail of this young little baby hun that flies then, hopefully the guy that owns the land next to it's not listening, but flies onto his private property. She goes sailing through the barbed wire fence to try to catch this bird. Fortunately, gets hung up enough, slowed, not hurt, but slowed by the fence that the hun gets away. And she's ripping through this horse pasture. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this puppy, like, Serge! Yelling at people A dog that doesn't have a shock collar on and has no care for me in the world when she's chasing a bird. So we're frazzled. We're like, all right, well, she got bird contact. We flushed like a good little family group or cubby, whatever. It was very exciting. So, all right, got to regroup. Like, let's still carry on towards the pigeons. So we start marching towards the pigeons, and she's ranging out, not decently, hits our scent trail from where we had gone, tried so hard to get out of the way, hits the scent trail. I try to call her off of it, like turning, walking the other way, Sage, this way, kind of our turn cue. She comes 2 steps toward me, is like, nope, this is the path to the pigeons, and rips up the trail. And goes marching right into the bird. So
like
Andrew
perfectly on her trail, like every like turn and zigzag.
Every turn, every zigzag, every bush that we went around, and she just tracked perfectly right to the pigeons. Andrew popped them quick. So we had a third bird. We only had 3 trained to that location. So we get, like, all right, well, that was done. We got the stupid Huns. Now we got these busted pigeons. So I'm like, all right. So I get Sage. Andrew's going back to the truck to get the third pigeon to reset it. And there's a man standing there who's the man that leases the land and runs his cattle on the land where we were training.
Oh, wow.
And so Andrew's in this heated conversation with this not landowner, this cattle owner that's leased this land, who basically, it was the second time we'd interacted with him and his people, and basically ran us off the state land, which was really disappointing. So bad training day all around. We both went home very disgruntled by everything that had happened that day.
But at least we knew she could track now. We knew she could do it.
That's exactly where my head's been going when you're telling the story. I'm like, you got a tracking dog on your hands. I mean, dogs will learn that for sure. Yeah. They'll literally boot track you, because all they have to do is something once with success, and their brain says, that's what I do. And almost to a fault where they'll start looking for boot scent as opposed to looking for a search, Right. And all the time you're telling that story, I'm like, well, this dog's tracking you guys good,
Yeah.
She's a great tracker. She's a good tracker, but it's a bad day for the pointing of the pigeons.
And that's something that, most people in the country really, certainly in your neck of the woods, but most people in the country, if we go training in a hayfield in Michigan or Iowa, Indiana, or maybe Iowa, but I mean, you're not going to run into wild birds. Like you had this great plan, and and then you're probably thinking like, oh my God, things happen, and as long as this is like a total backup part of it, but when I was in North Dakota for 2 weeks for the opener of Sharptail and Huns, we shot at a covey of Huns, and we quit shooting at them because they were so young. Like by September, I mean, they may not look just like their parents, but I was like, wow. So, I mean, you very well could have had that. Normally, it would have been a covey of Huns that got up more explosive, more gone out of their sight.
Right.
But you probably had maybe a rehatch or something. And not that it would ever, like, instincts don't expire on it. People have to, like, realize that. But you can alter instincts with success on things like catching birds.
Right.
Why wouldn't that dog say, I chased that bird down? Now, if that was in the mom or the dad Hun, no way in the world is he ever going to catch that. But a young one, And then all of a sudden he's like, you know what? This is the coolest thing that I've ever done in my whole life.
Yeah.
I don't need to point stuff. I'm just so awesome. I can just blow through there. I'll just grab him by the tail and eat it.
Exactly. I'm going to go to, so we kind of know, we see the dog tracking. Did you practice like formal tracking, like that you'd encounter in July for the test? Did you practice that?
Sort of.
Yeah. So we did formal tracking. We had been advised that it wasn't a good idea to do a lot of tracking training early on, because you can ruin their pointing, right? Because the goal is different. With a point, as soon as the dog hits scent, I want them to stop hard. With tracking, we want them to follow the scent and then try and find a bird, right? We want it back to end with success. And so we started let's think here. Was it about 10 days, 9 days before her test? It was the Friday of the weekend before, and she ran on Sunday. That was when we went up and went with William, and he, took a live pheasant and dragged it out for her, and then secured it tied to a tree so she could find it. And by this point, had figured out searching so well. We found ways to mask our scent. It previously involved lots of walking. Tangent back to that, but at one point we would walk, all of us, the dogs, me, Andrew, a friend who owned this private land that we ended up training on because of the conflict with the state guy. Different story there. But we would walk a mile, putting scent everywhere, right? Just like traipsing through the entire field, no pigeons. Then put the dog up, put pigeons out. Or Andrew was wonderful doing that, spending a lot of time, since I was then the handler.
Good at putting pigeons in bushes.
He's a pro pigeon planter. But anyway, so at this point, then when we do some formal tracking training, she's followed the track for 6 feet, and then searching's more fun, right? Searching's how I find birds. So she wasn't feeling like that was going to lead to a bird. So she goes off searching, hits the track again, searching, finally finds the bird. So we're like, okay, good thing we're doing some more tracking exposure, not training, but exposure.
Right.
So I think we ran her on 4 tracks that day. We did the pheasant once, then we switched to a dead duck that would leave more scent. Did we just do duck, or did we go back to pheasant?
I don't know. I don't remember.
But we ran, I think, 3 or 4 tracks.
Yeah, it was cool to see her, like, Will's perspective, and I guess this makes sense, right? And when you talk about the NAT test being like sort of awakening or like allowing for the dog to use their instinct to figure it out, it's cool to see Sage start to puzzle through it. And each time we did a track, like her search would be a smaller concentric circle.
Right.
Off the track. Like she'd run off and go like, oh shoot, I didn't find it, right? And she may cast like 40 yards the first time, and then come back, and then like 30, and then maybe 30 again, and then 25, and just like it's slowly.
Yeah, she would be making forward progress, but it would involve search loops.
Yeah.
They're like, oh shit, I got to go back, and then
Yeah.
a search loop. But you saw that shrinking in. So.
So we then, I think we had a really awesome 2 days of a NAVDA training. We did a Saturday, Sunday, where we basically ran mock tests. It wasn't a formal mock test, but we had NAVDA training days, and we said, hey, we want this to be as mock as possible. So other folks were shooting pigeons over their dogs, and we said, nope, we want, those bang bang from back behind us as we search through and replicate that scenario. Saturday was okay. We ran a track that went poorly. Sunday went really, really well. And the search section of that was cool because I got to walk right beside a NAVDA judge who happened to be there that day, and just pestered him with questions incessantly. And he was so kind. It was Chris Trina, a really phenomenal guy. And he answered every single question I had and more. So because it was really an awesome mock scenario, of me asking, hey, like, can I do this? When can I talk? What shouldn't I say? How do I do that from a handler's perspective? And so that was super helpful. And then we ran another, was it a live pheasant or a dead pheasant on that track day that you and
I think it was a live pheasant. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a rooster, I think.
Yeah.
So I think we ran then that day another live track scenario, and Sage did really well. And she did not great.
No, she did great.
But why did we decide if she did not great to do another? Because we ended up buying a pigeon or buying a pheasant.
Oh, just to give her like one more shot before the test.
Okay, so we were not confident in her tracking.
No, I thought we felt good. We just felt like, hey, like it's Sunday, the test, like we're gonna run next Sunday, so we have like an 8-day period. Like let's give her one more crack at it before the test. But we felt good. We felt like the weekend before, like okay, like she like seems to know what's going on. So we're like 70% of the way there.
So we wanted to do another tracking training with her.
Right.
So we got the live pheasant, and Andrew knew at this point how to do the placement of the pheasant.
I did not.
We thought Andrew knew how to do the placement of the pheasant because we ran her the first time on the pheasant, and basically we had some errors in how to put turns in the track, across wind, and she ended up scenting it without tracking it. and just ran straight to the bird.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had I think she found and killed the pheasant on the first go. So then we just did a couple more by the third or fourth. I don't remember if we ran her 3 or 4 times on tracking, but by the last one, the wind was great. Like Andrew had dragged just the perfect track, and she nailed it. The other thing that was cool about that day was me practicing the release, because that was something that I really keyed into at the handlers clinic, was which direction to place your hand and then how to release and when to not release.
Right.
So on that very final training track, I had brought her down, hand palm up with your fingers towards her head so that you don't disrupt pick up her head when you remove your hand from the collar,
Right.
and then bringing her down to smell the flat pile of feathers. And on that very final track, I did not feel confident. Like she was focused on the job. Like she just had too much energy still. And I felt like if I had released her, that she was going to rip off and, go searching. So I actually circled her. I kept my hand on her collar, circled her, brought her back, held her in close, because we had talked a lot about you need to have a different demeanor and different release from sending her out to search versus sending her out to track. And it was a command. We didn't train any cues to it. It was just my demeanor. And on that particular day, I did not feel confident in releasing her for that very final track. So I kept her, circled her back around, hugged her, calmed her back down, and then released her on the final one. And she just zigzag every perfect way Andrew went, found the bird, was super excited. And so we were like, all right, I think we're ready.
Yeah.
So it's training ourselves and training the dog at the same time.
I don't want to pick on guys here, but when we give these instructions to handlers, and most of the time it's like going in the ear and out the ear.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just want to let my dog go. The fact that you remembered to pay attention to because a dog walking up to do a track might have just smelled a gopher.
Right.
Literally, right? And you can just, when Courtney, or when, I don't know if Courtney or Will showed you that, but I'm guessing Will did because he's, a judge.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to absorb the information and remember it, that, Andrew, you're going to have some good dogs here down the road. I'm going to suggest that we'll get into the next dog a little bit later, but I'm going to suggest just leave Rachel do it all.
Yeah. I mean, we've already established that I can barely drag a pheasant behind me. So,
right. But that is such a key that, you do have to have I try to tell people in the beginning of a test, it's like changing gears going downhill. In the old days, you had to find a lower gear, and you want to assimilate that to the dog. Like, no, we're not going on a search now. This is another job. This is downhill. It's like a Jake brake being put on that truck,
Mm-hmm.
And but the fact that you could remember that, I'm telling you, I'm not trying to pump any sunshine under. It's not an onyx. That's not an onyx hat. I can't. No.
This one is.
Yeah, that one is. But Rachel's jumping ship here. What is that?
Oh no, that's a final rise.
I have Final Rise.
Oh, it's the Final Rise hat.
Repping the Final Rise vest hat.
That's a good looking. I like that cap.
It's a good cap. Yeah, I like it. I like Onyx too. Don't worry. I don't.
Yeah, well, you kind of
care
have to
about
like onyx.
Yeah.
But I do actually.
Yeah, so I don't want to pump sunshine under your hat, but the fact that you retain that information, just especially for an NA test, because it really is all the dog.
Yeah.
You can do things wrong as the handler. You can kind of freeze up. You can kind of be like, but taking it like, to remember that, I'm going to give you major credit for remembering to, if the dog's not focused, to just bring it around again. And the fact that you like calmed it down, that's huge later on when you're doing your steadiness training. Like, you having hands on a dog and calming it down, even though the dog's not just going to go, the dog's not going to deflate like a balloon. He's not going to go like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But the dog kind of realized, it's kind of like resetting it. It's kind of like a reset button. And that's pretty impressive. What did
Thank
you
you.
have?
I appreciate that.
Well, what did you have for water? Because again, 6 months old, you guys have frozen water like we do.
Yeah.
Were you, I want to say, all these things are instinctive, but water can be a funny one because maybe the age that it woke up and found that birds were great, might not have been the age where it found out that water was not a big deal. How did the water go with Sage?
Yeah, I mean, she, sort of like we talked about before, being a sort of like not charging into things, taking a step back, not wanting to crash into anything. Since it was cold, and even in May, we had a really cool spring here. She was not about going into the water. Even on, like, we take her for walks and there'd be a puddle and she'd be like, like I'm gonna walk around the puddle, or I'm gonna hit the brakes, and you are gonna walk around the puddle so that I can walk around the puddle. And so she wasn't about it. But we went, we're both from Colorado. So at the end of May, we went to Colorado to visit our families. And this was about the time where like her like prayer drive was waking up, and it was warmer in Colorado. And we were with my brother and his wife, and they have an English setter puppy that's 3 months older than Sage. And this dog loves to water retrieve. So a unique one amongst the setters doing water retrievals. And so we were trying to stoke the competitive fire in like having Sage watch Dutch go out and get bumpers and having all kinds of fun. And I think, was it you tossed the one that went out, she went out to get, right?
I think so. Oh, here's how it went. So we had this bumper and we'd done some land retrieves, and whichever dog got there first, we were like, hey, we've got to make the water fun. No rules up the water, way less discipline. If you want to jump on me, jump on me. We wanted water to be a blast. We could enforce controls later.
Right.
And so they have a rescue as well, a small husky. And so we had me, Sage, Dutch, the English setter, Arwen, the husky, who actually wasn't interested in the water, but all of us were like, I was really playful and charged towards the water, shaking this really fun bumper and tossed it. And Sage is ultra competitive, if that's not too much of a personification of a dog, but
right.
And so basically I was knee deep in the water, tossed it, and all of us were charging forward. So we just kept running. And Sage, before she knew it, she actually came through between my legs. And before she realized her paws were off the ground, she was swimming. And swam out, retrieved the bumper, and brought it back to the shore, and was not excited to go back in a second.
Like, nope. I know your tricks.
Yeah. So we got her in the once, and she swam. That was the first time she had swam without feet touching. We could get her to wade. We could get her to follow us across a shallow creek.
Yeah.
But we could not get her to swim without touching. So we were like, yes, she can swim. But we knew that was going to be a challenge ahead of trying to get her to swim.
So we got back to Montana, and they were still irrigating all the meadows, and there's an irrigation canal a few miles away from our house. And so we, Rachel and I, put on like swim trunks and wading shoes, and we just walked in zigzags back and forth across it. And Sage would stop at the edge and figure out like, how am I going to follow you? And so the first couple times we misjudged it, and it was narrow enough for her to jump. So she'd take a bound, and then the third or fourth time she tried the bounding technique and then belly flopped into the middle of the canal. I think we literally just ran zigzags for like 300 yards and gave her all kinds of praise and happiness and whatever she wanted, basically, to just make that fun. And it felt like from then she was just an absolute demon.
Well, what happened right after that was very shortly before the women's pointing dog camp. And so one of the things that, we did at camp was, hey, what's everybody's goal for the camp, in our little powwows at the beginning? And I said, gosh, we're really worried about Sage's water ability. And we swam a little, but she's just not showing any drive in the water. And we'd really like, that's my goal, is to get her excited about water. So on, I don't remember which day, I think it was maybe the second day of the camp, we took the dogs to the water, and the UT dogs were working on duck retreat or duck search and steadiness by the blind and things like that. And then we went to the little shallow area with the puppies for fun bumpers, right? Or just fun. And I had said, I'm really excited for Sage to get, excited about water. And one thing we'd noticed about Sage was that she's not food motivated, or she's becoming more so, but as a puppy, she could care less about food. And she's not extraordinarily affection motivated. She doesn't have a drive to please us. She's growing in that our relationship, our bond is growing.
Yeah.
But she's not a lab that's like, I will do it. I'll run off a cliff and make you happy.
Right,
She's like,
right.
no, running off a cliff's a really bad idea. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And so play is her biggest motivator. Like, to play with something's the best thing in the world. And then that competition or like drive against other dogs. And so I'm sure they all thought I was lying when I said that she didn't like the water, because we have these puppies and, some of them are on leashes and some are a little bit more free. And I grab a bumper. I'm like, all right, Sage, getting her super excited, chasing it, toss it in. And she just charges in front of the other dogs and, retrieves it, not back to me, but then parades it in front of all the other dogs. Of course,
Sure.
at that point, I'm like thrilled, she's excited about the bumpers. And at one point then, because I wanted her to have a really, really stellar experience. And so at one point, somebody else had an 8-month-old GSP, and that girl tossed this bumper for her dog, who goes into the water to start to get it. Well, little baby, whatever, 5-month-old Sage was like, that's my bumper. And that the GSP was doing the floundery puppy swim.
Oh yeah.
And little Sage has never done that. She's a little river otter. And so she just swims out to the water, passes the GSP, swims out, steals his retrieve, river otter back, and brings it to the shore. And so Mia, go ahead.
No, this sounds like somebody taking her kids for a play date at a birthday party.
Yeah.
It's like,
And mine's the
I
jerk.
didn't really mean for him to steal the ball.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's what I said.
But also, good boy.
Yes,
Good
exactly.
job.
That's exactly what I said. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that she stole the retrieve from Atlas. That's so rude. But on the inside, I'm like, yes, you rock star. Like, you steal that retrieve every time. I want you to get every bumper out of the water. So we had an awesome experience, and that flipped the water switch. She then never, well, she would sometimes hesitate for the first entry to get wet.
So one thing like Rachel did from that point on and continued to do even at the test was like dance and create excitement, like an absolute hooligan for Sage water. And one thing when we had done the handlers clinic and had spoken with some of the other NAVDA judges, that we had just met, is they were like, you can be as animated and excited at the water as you want. And I should have filmed you at the NA test and like run it on YouTube and monetized it or something.
Right.
Just so like jumping and like, hand gyrations and so forth. And
Right.
Sage was just so excited, and I think that really helped.
Yeah. And at that point, I don't think she needed it, but that's what I had done every time was 2 bumpers and like having her chase them and like, well, let's go, let's play, let's get it. And she's like, yes, I'm going to get it. And then by this point, we'd done tons and tons of, never more than 2 or 3 at a time, but tons of repetitions of water fetches of various distances. And so by that point, I was like, well, she doesn't need it, but I'm not running the chance that today, because she was also the first dog to go on that second day of the test. So nobody else had entered the water. So I was super excited and took my 2 bumpers and all right, Sage, let's go, let's get it. And chasing her around and tossed it in and splash, and she goes and screaming, good girl, let's go. And just so excited. And came back. She'd of course then drops the other bumper in order to chase the one I'm already playing with and toss it in, and she sails on in. And I had a lot of fun, lots of exuberance.
Well, I have told people that so many, in fact, something Andrew will see down the road here. I've been working on other content with training dogs and all that stuff. Had a good friend of mine him and his wife came out to North Dakota with me this year. So a year ago, last spring, he's got a poodle pointer, and they're pretty much, I would say if you waited till a poodle pointer was a year, like 16 months of age, right? Like the last day, probably going to swim. I mean, because it's pretty normal. But again, you're talking about a 6-month-old that not everything's confident in. And you had that dog you remember is like, first time it saw a bird, it hid behind your legs.
Yeah.
That's sitting in your head. And Trent had this poodle pointer, and I said, I need a dog that's going to be difficult to introduce to the water. And we got exactly what we were looking for. It took us a lot of, I filmed him in 5 different ponds and he would regress sometimes. Like he'd get confidence in one pond, but then the next pond was a different sight picture or a different texture, on the bottom. And one thing I tried to make, I said, it was kind of like making a movie. I was the director. I'm like, all right, next time, Trent, what I want you to do is get sillier. Just because I've seen him play with his dog at home, right? It's, hey, you're a good boy, But again, here he's like, okay, well, what do you mean? I said, like be silly, like swing the bumper around and be all goofy, And his version of goofy is like, okay.
Yeah.
But in the end, I mean, his dog did fine in the water too. But what we found for that dog was there's a inland lake off of Lake Michigan that's like literally you could walk out for 150 yards and you're not going to even get your inseam wet on your swim trunks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But his dog was small enough to where if he keeps following them, every once in a while, there's going to be flotation. And I think that one, finally the dog, that was the one time where Trent was like in the water, because I think he was like, maybe I do got to get more animated, and he's in the water. You can see it. We got him filmed. He's kicking his knees up and the dog's like, oh, my dad's having fun. But that makes a huge difference for someone. We tell people, and we use the word animated all the time. Like, don't be afraid to be silly, because dogs feed off of nervousness, but they also feed off of like you said, your dog loves to play like that. And you nailed it again. Boy, back to good thing Andrew didn't run this dog.
I know, right?
I don't think the scores would have been all fours.
A truer phrase there has never been spoken.
So you got tracking, you got water now. You're seeing Sage Point birds. And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but 6 months is young.
Yeah,
it's very young. You think about that. You cut that age in half, and he's just barely learning to hold his bladder.
Yeah. And I should say, like, the other motivating factor in running her was because of when she was born in January. By the time the Montana chapters would run their test next year, she would have aged out by 2 weeks. And so since she had really, like, the switch had only flipped, by that point, all the tests were fully booked with full waiting lists. And so we're sort of this same conundrum, right? Like, what do we do? Like, now that we know she has hunting instinct, we'd love to test her, and we can't test her next spring, so we have to find something this spring. And there just happened to be a test that got opened up. But yeah, just sort of a byproduct of when she was born was there was no way we could have run her. Maybe we could have found something random in Arizona.
I mean, in Montana, everybody knows you all have to drive hours to do anything, right? It's not like for you to say a 2-hour drive in Montana. For me, that's an inconvenience. In Montana, that could be going to the one store that's 2 hours.
Like going to dinner with your friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing that, But yeah, if you were in Wisconsin, there's 8 chapters, right? It's a different story. So you kind of had that. Now that you wanted to do it, then you had that like, well, it's going to have to be now,
Yeah, exactly.
So, Rachel, on test day, we're not going to run it by bird. Obviously, with a maximum score, the dog pointed, the dog swam, the dog tracked. Did you have enough? Because I've seen owners literally didn't think it went good. You know what I mean? They just didn't think it went good. Did you have enough background to be like, when they were going to read a score, you were like mouthing it? I mean, did you feel like it, or were you still surprised?
I wasn't surprised, but I was elated.
Yeah.
I knew at that point, based on the feedback of, just the gentle feedback along the way from the judges.
Right. We volunteered the day before.
Yeah. So it was a 2-day test, all NA. Saturday we volunteered, and so that was really helpful to just get the lay of the land. It was a brand new test site. Ended up being extremely close to our house, neighboring the property that we trained on, which was super cool.
Yeah.
And so we had been exposed to it enough. The previous day the previous weekend at the NAVTA training days, when we ran her second mock test that Sunday, she slayed it, and it was in the field search portion.
Yeah.
And so I kind of knew what the criteria was. I knew what we were looking for, and then the feedback from the judges along the way. Basically, I knew the only one I was thinking maybe might be a 3 was cooperation.
Well, that could be right. That could
But
always.
besides that, I knew the test, I knew the scores, and I knew she had performed. So in the field search portion, we went into risk mitigation mode, where the judges said, all right, Rachel, we're gonna, walk Sage down towards this end of the field where, if this was a wild bird area that just doesn't look very much like there'd be any wild birds at all. I really don't think that if I were hunting, I don't think there'd be any wild birds down there at all. AKA, take your dog on a walk, right?
Yeah.
And so I searched Sage down. We were in kind of a long, skinny field of the way the property worked out. Take her down, took her down that way, and knowing that there were no birds, that we've got to kill the clock.
Right.
And so, that word of risk mitigation, right? Basically, we don't want her to catch a bird.
Right.
Although she, would have been very close, but
And that's what I've always loved about that, and any good judge in any organization. When we're looking at a puppy, we're trying to find the best, and really all we want to see is, did it inherit point? They don't inherit obedience. We know that. That is not, obedience is not inherited. But did they inherit like water? People think it's like a love of water. It's not a love of water. It's a confidence of a different terrain. So you want to see that the dog handled water is just an exposure to a different terrain. It doesn't mean that your dog doesn't even mean your dog's going to be a great duck search dog. Although, with training, you can turn that into it. And then tracking is a total instinct, which on test day could go anyway.
Yeah.
I had Bravo, and I've seen Bravo track Chuckers when he was a pup, like an unbelievable. Like I cannot, like every once in a while, Chuckers will act like a rooster pheasant, right? They're just, they're just scooting across the hayfield and trying to get out to the shade or get in the tree line. And I remember running Bravo. I was super confident in the water. Like literally, I would have bet my mortgage that the water was going to be a 4. Search should have been a 4, which it was, but that could go kind of south, catch a bird, get crazy. But on track, I remember walking up with him. I put him down on the track, and about 15 yards into the track, he turned left and went over to like a woodchuck hole.
oh,
And I'm like, but now you got to remember, I've done this test a dozen or more times. So I'm like, okay, it's no big deal. And it's kind of awkward being a judge and then being the handler that day.
Yeah.
And the judge would say, Ron, call him back. Well, let's just start. Let's get him. Like, the judges don't know that there's a woodchuck hole there, right? They kind of feel bad for you. And I brought him back around and I said, okay, come on, track. Same thing, get him scooped up, get him everything right, hand down on the ground. He does the same exact thing and goes over the woodchuck hole. And I'll never forget, and this would only come after doing this for a long time. I wasn't worried because I had all these scores before. I wasn't worried about it as long as they acknowledged that the first 15 feet was tracking.
Yeah.
And I'll remember this one judge, and not to be like, I'm born and raised in Chicago, so nepotism and voting, we're crooked as could be in Chicago. One of the judges says to me, Ron, we're just going to bring you back and run you again because we didn't know the woodchuck hole was there. I said, I don't. I said, do you have any data on your cards? He goes, well, yeah, but I said, don't make the day last longer. And they looked at me like, you don't want to try this again? There's 2 things that could have happened. I know that he tracked for 15 yards. I know that that's going to be a 1 or a 2, right? Yeah. In my heart. And I mean, it was nose to the ground tracking.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, they saw something that they're going to have he made forward progress. But I also knew that I could bring him to another part of the field and a bobolink could come out of the field. And
Right.
I said, no, hey, as long as you guys have something on your card for a note, I let it go. But
Yeah.
tracking can always be a bit of a, to me,
It's
like
fascinating.
like when you know you got water, I think you almost always have water.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, you know you got point, but tracking can be, to me, that's always the nerve-wracking one for me.
Oh, totally. And it seems like, I mean, you know this way better than we do. Like, every dog acknowledges and runs a track differently, right? The way they like process it and go through, like it looks different. And so it almost seems like, at least in our limited sample sizes of dogs we've seen run track, like it's hard to tell, or it can be hard to tell, like, is this dog searching or is this dog running a track? Have they acknowledged it? Like, what does that look like? Because they all do it differently.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like they always say, like, all snowflakes are different, if you put them under a microscope. Yeah, they got to make, the bottom line is they got to make forward progress, but it can be head up, it could be head down, it could be circles. They just have to show that if you shoot a bird someday, he's got a good chance that he's going to do it. Now, I want to jump forward now. Season's been on for a full month in Montana.
Yep.
How has Sage, I mean, I'm not expecting glorious stories, but how did this poodle pointer that, again, it's 6 months, showed all of its colors,
Yeah.
Have you had him out on Sharpies and Huns, anything yet?
Yeah. So we call her the poodle flusher. And so, so we've gone out, we've had so much fun this season. We've been out, I don't know how many days, but a bunch. So we got to start out, out east on Sharptail and Huns and got into a bunch of birds out there. And then we're really blessed with great mountain grouse hunting, in Western Montana and Idaho. So we've gotten to do that a bunch. And I think, so our expectation going into the season was that, like, the Sage and then Basil is the other puppy, like, no pressure, right? Like, they get to go have fun and enjoy and learn through making mistakes. So our expectation wasn't that she would be like locking up hard on birds or doing things within the same way that she was within the structure of the NA test. And I think, like, as Rachel mentioned, like, because we had her on pigeons so much, that creates I think, like, a fun rude awakening. Maybe fun's the wrong word, but a rude awakening for the dog, right? When they start getting into wild birds and they go, oh shoot, like, these things are like, do not sit the way they do when mom and dad put them in places for me to smell them. That said, so the first week we spent in Eastern Montana, like, Sage progressed every day to, like, what the heck, there's cactus on the ground. Why would you do that to me? Like, there's cactus, dude, like, busting a bunch of birds and then, like, locking up on a hen pheasant and she's like, oh, okay. And then, like, by the last day we were there, like, doing some awesome work on Huns and locking up hard on a single on, like, the corner of an ag field and doing stellar. So it's been cool to see her.
And she still bumps a lot of
Oh
birds,
yeah,
right?
totally.
She's just a baby puppy still, and she's
I mean, we're talking what, 8.5 months now, or
yeah.
So we're super obsessed with our dogs. They're our baby children. My parents and grandparents think we're absolutely bonkers, but I have a little journal in my phone and a little note in my phone that every day we hunt, we write down where we hunted, what we saw, how Sage ran, if Basil was on the ground, how she did, how many birds we found, if we shot birds, how many miles we went. That's for every hunt every day. And it's just fun. It's just fun. We're not doing this. It probably sounds a lot more serious. We love it. And this is just, it's cool to record the progress from found birds, but bumped. On the, third day of the season, we were actually still hunting mountain grouse. And I was getting a little nervous, probably unnecessarily, but I was like, have we ruined her ability to point? Has this dog been on so many pigeons, she'll never, because then, and she'll never point a wild bird. So I had taken her, we had split up. Andrew took Basil up this creek looking for roughies. I took Sage out in a similar areas. The same BMA actually had both roughy terrain and Hun terrain. Cool thing about where we live in Montana.
Yeah.
So I took Sage up looking for Huns and didn't find any. And I was like, all right, we're a little soon, about 20 minutes before we meet for the truck. I'm going to go down and look for roughies along this creek bed. And also water sage. It was really hot where we thought we'd find Huns. I'm like, hey, let's go looking through here. So we go through, I find some feathers right away. So I'm like, oh, that's really exciting. Sage is ranging a little bit, but she was really hot from our Hun run. And I see her lock up hard, pointing at this tree, like this big brushy, low, not tree, but brush. Yeah. And so, but I'm it's hunting season at this point. So we're trying to shoot a bird for her, but I'm on the side of this big, thicker tree. So I can see her, but I can't see anything higher than that. So as I'm ducking under, the tree explodes with roughies.
Oh my God.
And so I was like, Andrew, she can point. This is so exciting. I shot in the air once, shot in the air twice, missed them both because roughies are horribly hard to hit in that thick stuff. And I'm a novice shooter of wild birds. Improving, but lots to grow there. But I was like, she pointed. So that was her first wild bird hunting season point. So that was super exciting and cool.
I mean, I think like what's cool is like when we put her on the ground, she knows what she's there to do. And like, again, she's making tons of mistakes, which is what we want because you see her progression, but she's like searching with purpose and confidence. And like for us, like
in the beginning, she's kind of looking for the pigeon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then those birds, like everybody says that wild birds will teach them manners.
Yeah.
It's maybe fortuitous that, you probably, I'm speculating, you probably did more than you needed to with pigeons.
Probably.
You wanted to see the point. You wanted to make sure she was going to do it. So you have to accept the fact that on wild bird, she's going to be what'd you call her? Flushing.
Poodle flusher. Yes.
Yeah. But then when you see that point, and you're like, we got it. It's really going to get better, contact after contact, and the beauty of it is, would you have loved to knock one of those birds down and make it complete? But that wouldn't matter to her. Yeah. She found that, like, by stopping early enough, that this is what I'm going to do. And I will tell you, do not train that dog, even though she might be a rock star. Do not train that dog for utility next year.
No,
we won't.
Just hunt the heck out of that dog this season. And I would work on things like, come when called, and you can work on. I was just talking to a guy the other. I obviously with the podcast, I feel like I could probably make more money charging people for phone calls than I do from my sponsors like Onyx, because I will spend an hour on the phone with somebody. I said, next year, I want you to work on steadiness, but not on birds. I want your dog to be steady to gunshot. And this guy says, what do you mean? I said, have your dog steady to the noise of a gun. Because up until now, the noise of a gun is go. Like, boom, go. No, next spring, work on steadiness to the shot. And people are like, well, wait a minute. Your dog already points. And the gunshot can be a trigger to go. So get this dog out in the field next year and watch this dog run around the field. And it'd almost be like blowing the whistle or saying the word whoa. When you shoot the gun, that dog's going to stop. Like that's the kind of stuff you can work on. Then your second season will be stellar. I mean, you live in Montana.
Yeah.
And our goal next year is sort of similar to that. Like we don't intend to utility test her next year, just to like let her mature and further some of these things. But I mean, if we're gonna go back to like mistakes we made, like I realized actually like before the NA test is we were started applying some pressure to her, me especially, without realizing it.
Right.
And she wasn't about it, right? She was like, she was reacting adversely to that. And it sort of had to check myself and go like, we didn't get this dog with the purpose of having her rock a NAVTA test. We got her so we could have a family member first and then an awesome hunter, right, that we're going to have fun with for years. And like, that's the goal, right? Like we want her to have like fun and enjoy her activity, which is hunting and having a great time in it. And it's just a good reminder to me, to be like, she's here to have a good time, right? If she's not having a good time, then we're doing our jobs wrong.
Yeah. And people do lose that focus, but you guys were kind of compressed into that, oh shoot. If I want to travel to Wisconsin, I actually have to get ready for this test in a compressed amount of time. And we've been on for, my God, so we could talk for hours, but
we're having a good time.
Hey, it is a good time. I love it.
Yeah.
This is like sitting on a tailgate after a hunt,
Yeah.
But you guys, I want to say you made the best decision, yet a crazy one. You have another puppy now. I think you mentioned it. Rachel mentioned it with Basil. You not only have a young poodle pointer, you made the fatal mistake of seeing a litter of wire hair puppies over at the Bastion's house.
Yeah.
And now you have another dog. But the upside is this dog will actually probably get some wild bird contacts this year.
Yeah.
She's had a ton of wild bird contact.
Yeah, we hunt her like every time we go. She gets time on the ground.
Some time on the ground. Now, how old's Basil right now?
4.5 months.
I think so, yep.
Yeah.
And she's got into some Huns and Sharpies already at 4.5 months.
And mountain grouse, yeah. And she's like, pointed and had a good time. If anything, like, because of the time of year she was born, we ran sage on pigeons because there were no other birds to run her on.
Right.
Basil's born and hunting season happens and we're out hunting. So Basil's been exposed to pigeons maybe twice, at least from us, but by and large, the majority of her bird exposure are wild birds.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see her in the past like week or so. Like that's what you can also see it sort of starting to flip and her like moving through the woods with confidence, like I'm here to find birds and eat them. She likes to she did eat one.
I don't know. I know you haven't been at this a long time, Rachel, but they're not supposed to eat them. Okay.
Yeah, I gathered. Although it might be a cool skill because she just ate out the guts and the backside of the bird.
Left the breast.
So I think the newest way to train your dog is that they
clean it for you.
Yeah, they point them, hold them, retrieve them, and present the cleaned breast. I think that's the next level of the UT test. Is the cleaned breast. Because that's basically all that was left, and we still ate the meat. It was great. It was a little spruce grouse.
Oh, well, I guess that's not a lose. That's probably that's going to go into W column. That's going to
no, we did not handle it that way at the moment. It's funny to reflect back on that way. You weren't
excited when it was happening.
No, they were not kind words taking place at that moment.
Was there a lot of like old school? No.
Well,
yeah, it's hard because like we're sensitive to the fact that every encounter the puppies have with birds should be a positive one, right? Like, this is great. Birds are awesome. We all love birds. You should love birds. We love birds, In this case, as it turns out, I had shot and hit 2, but didn't realize it. And so we saw Basil take off into the brush with a bird in her mouth. And then we walked over where she'd taken off and there was a bird lying there. I was like, oh, sweet. She dropped it and carried on. So we picked up the bird and kept hunting. And then, a couple minutes later, Basil.
Well, we didn't know where she was. Basil and another dog were on the ground, a mature dog. And we're like, where are the dogs? Wait a second,
Where'd
Basil.
They go?
So we start calling for her, and they both come running through the woods, and Basil has this grouse in her mouth.
and at that point, there was no giving it up. So at that point, we started like, hey, like at this point, we will correct, and at least like look like we're dissatisfied or displeased, because that's not what we want to have happen. But until then, we're pretty much like, oh, good girl, you got it, hooray!
Like, oh no, she's eating it. No. We had to catch her. She's very little and very fast, and it was in very thick cover. So we actually got her cornered as she was eating the bird because she couldn't get out with how thick the cover was. Not the best moment for the bird dogs or the people.
You mentioned how you split off, like Andrew took Basil and you took Sage. Are you trying to keep them separate in the field in their searches? Because that's kind of important.
Yeah. I think for the most part, we've been intentional about running them separately unless the situation didn't permit it at all. Like if we, for example, like a couple weeks ago, we had just like a small sliver of time after work before the sun was setting. It was like, hey, we're just going to take the guns and the dogs and just go.
Yeah.
Right. We have a short period of time and it was big enough country to where they couldn't bother each other. But outside of that, yeah, we try to run them each individually so they can sort of figure it out.
Yeah, that's a definite good thing. I mean, people will think that running a young dog with of course, you really have a young dog and a younger dog, really.
Right.
Yes.
But people will make that mistake, say, well, if I run my young dog with my older dog, what they end up doing is just kind of playing tag along sometimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, I'll make a prediction that probably Sage will, or Basil will probably, if she continues to get a few wild bird contacts, you'll probably be able to cut off the pigeons next year. You know what I mean? Because if you see a dog point wild birds in the course of this year, that Basil, your younger one, I guarantee you that dog's going to point a chucker that somebody puts in the grass for.
Oh,
Absolutely.
totally. Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah, and she has already actually.
Yeah, she pointed some rough grouse.
Basil pointed rough grouse, and she was wearing a GPS collar at this point. I'll let you tell the story. I was across the other side of the creek.
Yeah, we were out with Will sort of scouting some new places, and I don't think these birds have been hunted at all. So they were holding ridiculously tight for rough grouse, and we were walking through some thick stuff. Basil was in front of us, and she stopped and like looked at the collar and said she was on point. We're like, nah, she's not on point. And she, just as we said that, like she like put her head up and like started to move, but she was just relocating and she locked up on point again. Wow. And I took a step forward and like a big family group got up and just exploded out of the woods. And we went, shoot, should have trusted her.
Guess we'll trust the baby next time.
Yeah, trust the baby.
Yeah,
well, that's fantastic. I'll tell you, all the years I did that, when I don't want to say you guys are rare, but you also live in wild bird country. And again, we know a lot of adapted people live in the Carolinas, and like if you live in Indiana, you got a problem on your hands unless you travel, right?
Right.
You guys are lucky in the fact that you live in wild bird country, and you can take these two dogs at different levels, and you're going to see like so much stuff in the next, I'm just going to say like next spring, we're not going to worry about Basil's test until next spring. You're probably going to test Basil probably, right?
Yeah, we will.
Unless she doesn't swim or something, but.
She already is doing water retrieves.
Oh.
And has tracked shot birds already. So we test her now at 4.5 months.
Now you have the thing like, I guess Sage was a dud in the beginning.
Sage was a dud. It took her to 6 months, but Basil could do it 4.5. What a dud.
Right. She's just like, she's exceptional. But did they get along good though and everything? They
do.
They're friends.
Yeah, they love to have fun. It's interesting. We love it's fun having a house, or the whole house isn't bearded ladies because Rachel doesn't have a beard, but it's fun watching the two little German puppies romp around and wrestle and just have a good time. So they get along really well. Although I will say, like, they do have different personalities, and we've had to be intentional about, like, so Sage is fairly submissive. Basil is not. Like Basil, even at half of Sage's size, would like pin her and so even like when we brought her home, like I think unintentionally, like I was feeding her and I went down to do something and my hand was near her food bowl and she snarled at me. So we've had to, like, the first month or so, we had to like hold her on her back a lot and stick our hands in her food bowl and stuff like that. Just
in her face, like we'll get down and pin her down and we don't do that. Like growl in her face, like, hey, we're the boss. Right. If she would occasionally, so she stopped anything towards us very quickly. Yeah. And occasionally then she would, kind of growl at Sage if they were chewing on bones, and Otherwise, and anytime that happened, I would take her bone and in fact, one time I grabbed her mouth while taking the bone and kind of squished her mouth around the bone, made her yelp,
Yeah.
and then pinned her down and, no, we don't do that. Like, hey, this is not okay. Bones were gone and dogs were put up. And now this afternoon, they both had bones and they like to play keep away with the bones a little, or like go steal
Right.
each other's bones, but there was no growling involved.
Yeah.
Right.
But we have to be pretty careful to set Basil up so that she doesn't get to be in super like assertive aggressive mode.
Well, yeah, you don't want her to get so full of herself that it's like,
Right.
I'm in charge all the time. Well, you've either got good mentors, you read a lot or something. I'm saying you're doing everything pretty gosh darn good.
Well, Aaron made a lot of mistakes, but I think like we've
Thank you.
But we're not recording those mistakes. We're just
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That'll get edited out later, right?
Yeah,
This is only
exactly.
good
but I feel like I feel super thankful. Like we've been surrounded with really good like people and resources along the way, right? Like we've had William and Courtney, like Ron, I've asked you a bunch of questions. I've asked Ben a bunch of questions.
We watched all the Upland Institute.
Yeah.
A bazillion times.
Yeah.
Cornerstone for some general obedience.
Like, and it's just been like, I don't think I realized till we got into it how many people we actually had around us that were super supportive and just like willing to give us wisdom, and so that's been really cool to have.
it's not like a hunting a journey becoming an elk hunter, becoming a trout fisher. It's a different journey because you always get those people that are either a step behind you or two ahead of you.
Yeah.
You almost kind of like feel like you could be a mentor to somebody who just showed up a day after you did to a training day, but you always have those mentors ahead of you.
Yeah,
it is a heck of a family, the Bird Dog family. I mean, it's
cool.
Yeah,
it's
and
special,
you'll end up, like over the years, you're gonna hunt with people, and you're gonna go like, oh my God, I wish we'd have met you earlier. Your dog wouldn't be such a nitwit, But at the same time, if that person's of the right mind, they're gonna be like, what did you do to get that done? You're gonna ask that question, and you're gonna be like, well, we've only been at it a few years, but this is what you should do. Like when it comes times to correcting Basil, that's the exact right thing you do. You treat that puppy like the mother treated the puppy. I don't know if you got to watch, well, you probably haven't watched a litter of pups raised by a mom, but it is a brutal, I mean, like when a mom doesn't want to be nursed on and they're pretty much weaned off of nursing, but occasionally at night they'll still nurse. In the middle of the day, that puppy comes up and says, hey, I'm hungry, and that mom will turn on that puppy like the first time you see it as a breeder, you're pretty sure that the mother just killed that puppy. And all it did was scare the crap out of it and said, I said no, and I meant no.
Yeah.
And you did that with the bone and the dog. And that is so crucial because dogs learn everything by association.
Yeah.
And when they associate that bad behavior is associated with scolding, they're like, I got it. Yeah, my mom was just like you, Rachel. Like you.
Good.
You did the right thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll have to do this next year again. So we can report on Basil, probably running NA in the spring or the early summer.
Yeah.
And of course, I'll be talking I'll probably talk with both of you, but I'll get to hear how the season goes with Sage and Basil. Sage and Basil. I'm just realizing that these are ingredients. Why did this take me? Because I'm only on my third Oktoberfest. I just realized you name your dogs after spices.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, around the office, some of my coworkers call them the Spice Girls, even though they're technically herbs, but they're
right. You said that early on, maybe before we hit recording, and that one went right over my head when you said the Spice Girls. I'm like going, oh, I think I just realized that they named them after
spices.
Yeah, we have dreams of filling out the whole cabinets. We want like cayenne and paprika and
Kai. Kai's a great name for dog. Kai, that's a nice call name.
Yeah.
I don't know about paprika,
Oregano,
oregano.
cilantro.
Yeah, but
Yeah, we might be done with herbs after this, Nick. We'll see. We'll see. A baby puppy named Paprika might be the next to join the pack. So stay
I
tuned.
will say that Sage is probably one of the more common names for a dog.
Yeah.
I've heard of a couple Basils, but that's a different. But was that purposeful, Sage and Basil, or did you realize that you just named them after two herbs?
No, well, we recognize the connection. I had met another dog named Basil previously, a little baby Rocco named Basil, and I was like, "Oh, that's super cute."
Okay.
So I thought that was fun. When we had some other baby puppy names, female puppy names, we had already had puppy fever for another puppy, even when Sage was young. So I think the stars just aligned. We were supposed to get this other one, but these other more serious puppy names just didn't fit her. Like Basil's a
She's
goober.
such a little punk.
She's a goober. Like she's just a goofy, squirrely, fun-loving little dog. She's so great. And these more, more serious or distinguished dog names just didn't fit her goober personality. So we thought, well, you know what? We have Sage, we have Basil, we love to cook. Love using those herbs. So there we are. Sage and basil. We have some friends that thought they were sage and parsley for a long time. That was South.
Isn't that like an Art Garfunkel song or no? One of them.
Parsley, sage, rosemary.
All right, let's say that's good enough to cut it off. Well, anyway, Rachel and Andrew and Sage and Basil. We didn't get to have Sage and Basil on camera, but I appreciate you guys coming on and tell me about your journey and to make my qualifications for doing a podcast all about Onyx, this was not it. So, but I will tell you, finally, Andrew, in North Dakota, thank God I had Trent and Heather with me, a couple that from Michigan. They came out to our grouse camp. As much as I I can find a spot and I can set a pin. When somebody that's in their 30s can show me some stuff on Onyx, it is pretty freaking amazing. I mean,
it is.
I was like, so I'm showing other people, and I'm like, no, here's what you do. You do this and this. And I finally feel like I can talk to somebody, much as I love the program or the product. I was always like, it's like I am with my Garmin collars. I wouldn't go anywhere without some tracking on my dogs.
Yeah.
But I'm a fumble thumbs when it comes to really, high, low, medium. I've just never done it. And I've always felt like a little inadequate. I was Onyx inadequate all these years. I am no longer. That the electronic posting in North Dakota, that comes in, and I know you can probably get it probably from the state. I don't know if you can get it from the state.
Yeah, I think you can.
But when you see where you're at in that, that just makes it takes a layer of worry off.
Yeah.
That is handy as hell.
For sure. I mean, I work there, and the amount of things, because I work there, I consider myself pretty savvy in using it, but the amount of things I learn on a daily, weekly basis of things you can do or how you can use it. I mean, it's a power tool.
Yeah.
And while it's a great tool, there's always room for improvement. So even, you telling me about things you didn't realize in there just makes me realize hey, there's some education we need to do or ways to make the product better to use and so forth. And so that's good feedback for ways we can.
Yeah. It's almost like that you just maybe we're losing the dog thread, but that's okay. I think we got a good picture of the dogs, but it's kind of like if I can learn something new, how many of your customers are where I was?
Exactly.
Where I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could navigate. I didn't know you could measure distance. I didn't know there. So I can't, I've always been a big fan of it. You guys are a great sponsor, but I'm like, this shit's really good.
Oh, well, thank you.
Now it doesn't make your 9-month-old or 8-month-old poodle pointer, your 4-month-old short hair, wire hair hunt any better. But
it could. You scout appropriately to actually get at the birds.
Yes, and that's what Trent showed me.
Yeah, we've done a lot of e-scouting, like looking for the different species and the different terrain and trying to figure out how to use Onyx, right? Because in a mountainous region, access to public land is not the issue. Everything's state forest,
Yeah.
super accessible, but you could walk, and we have. Last year, we didn't know as much about habitat and how to find them. We walked miles and miles and miles with no birds.
I will summarize one of our hunting weekends last year: 20 miles, 2 grouse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Compared to this year, where Andrew's exceptional, especially at understanding the different elevation bands and the different terrain to find different species. So a couple weekends ago, he had said, hey guys, we have this really awesome, place I want to try. Have scouted these cool places where we can find some roughies and some duskies. And so we take off on what turns into a 10-mile loop. Where we filled 3 mountain grouse limits, which is 3 each.
Wow.
One guy, the other fellow with us, shot 1 of each species, and we all filled our limits. I got 2 duskies and a rough. Andrew shot 3 spruce, and the other guy got 1 of each.
Wow.
And we could have shot more, but it was cool because without Onyx, 1, we wouldn't have gone to that spot, and 2, I wouldn't have had the confidence to walk through that terrain up and over. We were climbing up ridges and down ridges, and I would never have felt safe doing that, not having such good, navigation, knowing where we were going and how to get home. Because it was a loop, it wasn't a mountain back.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Yeah, it was. I learned from Trent, like, of course, he's a lot younger than me. He's in his 30s. He has got long legs. He can put the miles on. But like in a couple days, he would just come back and start looking at, there's so many, where we were, there's a lot of private property that's open. Well, we pretty much hunt in WMAs and North Dakota trust lands because it's easy,
Yeah.
And for some reason, people think you need to go private so they don't go to the state lands, And he would sit there at night and he'd show me, and he's like, show me the topographic. He's like, man, this piece of property's got like, this ridge line runs all the way. And that guy was just slaying them, him and Heather were. Yeah. One of them got a limit of Huns and a limit of Sharpies in an afternoon. And
holy cow.
And so when they left, I had 5 days all to myself. I was going to go on to Wyoming and I couldn't do it for a couple of reasons. And I'm like, also, why would I? I'm in bird country.
Yeah.
I don't drive. And I finally used some of that stuff. And I'm like, I found a spot. I'm like, well, that looks like what he was showing me. And I blow it up and I'm like, I'm going to do it. I don't want to say it was magic. I mean, the habitat was great this year. The water, but it was a heck of a tool. That's enough of our Onyx mini commercial. But Rachel and Andrew, I appreciate you coming on. It's I'm sure I would bet one day we might walk the dogs together someday.
That'd be fun. We'd love that.
And I will end it. Let me just see. I'll just edit that out because I always get clunky at the end trying to say goodbye because I get all weepy.